We've got our very special guest on with us today, John Tamny. John, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on, Nate. I appreciate it. It's worthwhile some people say that try to find what it would pain you not to do, or try to find the profession, try to find the activity in life and make it work what you do, even if it weren't work. And so there's that. And some people will say, oh, well, that's just not realistic. It's more and more realistic in the times in which we live, and it's going to become exponentially more realistic in the future, that work will be a reflection of who we are. And it's going to cause people to redefine retirement. It cannot be stressed enough that people used to look forward to retirement. More and more Americans cry when they retire. Look at Peyton Manning when he had to give up what he loved. Look at how Tiger Woods has fought through all sorts of back issues over the years just to continue doing what he loves. It's my contention that more and more describes work for a lot of people, that they will say, they will try to figure out any way possible to continue doing what they do until the day they die, because they get joy from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I want to maybe transition a little bit here from talking about the sports to talking about the COVID response, the stimulus packages, everything like that. Because when I heard a podcast that you did back in March of 2020, you were recording it March 24th, which was literally like the day after the S&P had hit its bottom. And you made some predictions at that point about the government intervention and how you felt it was wrong and it actually hinders growth. And now we're, over a year past that. So we have some information in the rear view mirror that we can glean from here. And so I want to hear your thoughts on what you feel happened, whether it should or not, and what you feel the ramifications are going to be long term.
What happened was nothing short of a tragedy. Easily the most colossally tragic policy error of the 21st century. I wrote a book about it, When Politicians Panicked. Might as well show that.
Yeah. We'll link to that in the show notes.
That's enough. The idea that they would fight a virus with economic contraction by destroying jobs, destroying businesses. Historians will marvel at the abject stupidity of the political class that they'd go this route, because historically, economic growth has always been the biggest enemy of death and disease, whereas poverty is easily mankind's greatest killer and nothing else comes close. So with the virus spreading, politicians set about contracting the very economic engine that has relentlessly produced advance in the healthcare space, such that so much that used to easily kill us no longer does. Again, historians will marvel that politicians went this route. It was so obviously disastrous from day one, yet in their arrogance to presume that we needed them to guide us, they set us on a really horrific path that burdened those with the least by far the most. If you had the temerity to have a job that was a destination, how dare you? We will put you out of work because, all of us making the decisions for everyone, we've got jobs we can do from anywhere. And so your jobs don't matter. Your businesses don't matter. Mm-hmm. As long as you can get us our groceries and we can watch our Tiger King on Netflix, and as long as we have fast enough internet so that we can showcase our virtue around, you little people don't matter. It was a sickening thing done by the political class.
Agreed. So what kind of precedent does that set? We had bailouts in 08. I mean, that wasn't the first time bailouts happened either, but I mean, we're starting to see a precedent set, and the numbers just get bigger and bigger every single time. So one, what kind of precedent does that set? But two, what does that do going forward?
You asked the perfect question. Will there be lockdowns again? And that's why in the second to last chapter of the book, I make a case that we can't make this a statistical debate. The statistics support the obvious argument that the politicians should never have locked down. Why would you lock down all of society based on a virus that the vast majority of people either don't know they have, or it's so meek that they can't even be bothered to go to the doctor to find out if they're infected with it. But that's a bad argument. Shouldn't lockdown, period. To make it statistical, to say that 88% of those who infected with the virus either don't know they have it or it's too meek to bother to check, is a reason to not lock down, implies that politicians, if something is lethal enough, should have the right to take away our freedom to work, our freedom to operate our business, our freedom to live our lives as we want. No, they shouldn't take away our freedom in general. And to be clear, the more lethal a virus is, let's say it had killed tens of millions of Americans, any government force in response to that would have been superfluous. I mean, really, if something threatens you, we as a species has evolved to protecting ourselves. If something threatens you, you're going to take precautions on your own. And indeed, that's what Americans were doing long before the lockdowns. They were taking precautions ahead of time just to be safe. So the idea that we needed political force to force us to protect ourselves was just asinine and tragic and mean-spirited, once again, to those with the least.
So then going forward, what do you think this is going to do for inflation and devaluing the dollar? And then ultimately, I'll say the last part of this would be, do you think we can ever go back? Can we undo the precedent?
To me, inflation is certainly inflation is a devaluation of the dollar. There are not causes of inflation. You devalue, and that is inflation. Suddenly, the dollar you're earning is exchangeable for fewer goods and services. Historically, money has been measured in gold, not because gold is some mystical concept. Just gold historically, it's the commodity that is moved the least by external and internal forces. And so historically, governments and plus individuals, they just define money in terms of gold. And so inflation is just a devaluation of the unit. We don't have to devalue. People will say, well, there's all this government spending, and the government spending is a weight on economic growth, but it doesn't, even taking on debt doesn't presume devaluation. The US had enormous debt after World War II, but we had a stable dollar. We chose to have a stable dollar. And so it's hard to say what this means for inflation. It's more, watch what President Biden does. Does he want to pursue a policy of a weak dollar? If so, markets comply. Presidents get the dollar they want. More broadly from there, what does this mean for the future? I worry that they've created a norm, that there's this expectation in crowds that people wear masks, that businesses will have to basically do the bidding of government to basically shrink how many people can be inside, to limit crowds. And if so, how tragic. Let's never forget that businesses, successful cultures are based on the constant bumping in of people. Apple's Steve Jobs, the last major project of his was Apple's headquarters, which he designed with it very much in mind that people would run into each other every day. The best companies have a corporate culture of people interacting with one another. Yet suddenly the political class in its infinite wisdom wants to separate people on the supposition that the very people who drove all economic progress and all healthcare progress are suddenly a lethal menace to one another by virtue of being around each other. We must reverse this narrative, but I worry, as you allude, that to some degree, some of it's here for good.
Hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell to get updated every single week when we put out new content. Let's see, if you are watching this on the podcast, we bring podcasts out every single week. There's just a lot of content that we are always trying to bring people in order to empower them to live the retirement they deserve. Take care.